declares a state of emergency. He's put that, which basically gives the governor the ability to mobilize all state resources down to support his counties. And then once the state's capacity was exceeded over several days ago, they asked for a presidential disaster declaration. The president moved in an expedited and very swift, one of the quickest time frames I've ever seen, to approve the disaster declaration so we can mobilize our resources to help. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, Renee Marsh with CNN. I understand, and we all know, that there are several refineries as well as Superfund sites, so contaminated sites in this region where we're seeing a lot of flooding. So my question is, do you all have an assessment as far as what's in the water at this point, and what are the health implications for the people who are wading through the water? I mean, we're talking about a lot of toxic chemicals, specifically from those Superfund sites.
You know, at this time, it's still a developing situation. We're so focused on life safety. We understand that the environment piece is going to be big in this case, but we do not have accurate information right now.
And I have the same, for HHS Secretary Price. I mean, do you have any, as far as what you're learning about the potential health impacts for people?
As Brock said, it's very early in this, but what we do know is that the water in Corpus Christi and in Victoria area, recommendation for boiling of the water before consumption. The good news is that the work that's been done, the pre-deployment that's been done, as Brock says, there's significant assets, water assets there that are available for folks, and that's the challenge that we have, is getting them to people.
And also, just in terms of the refineries, most of the refineries exercised voluntary shutdown before the storm hit. Very prudent measure, and that will help with any environmental issue.
Is the number of 24%, 25%, a quarter of them already shut down, correct?
I believe, I do not know the exact number, but it was, most of them did do a voluntary shutdown well in advance of landfall.
Administrator Brock, you have, normally we hear emergency officials say, let the first responders handle it. You've just called for volunteers, for American citizens, to jump in and help Texas. What does that say about the situation right now?
I mean, this is a landmark event for Texas. Texas has never seen an event like this. This is going to eclipse Ike. It's going to eclipse Allison that occurred in 2001. And based on the benchmarks of those storms, we know it's going to be large.
Mr. Administrator, we've seen images of the Coast Guard heroically rescuing people off rooftops, citizens going in their boats to pull neighbors out of houses. Images we really haven't seen in this capacity since Katrina. Should there have been a bigger effort to evacuate Houston and surrounding areas than we saw, given the amount of flooding?
Yep, that's a great question. So all evacuation decisions are made at the local level within Texas, but right now, I believe that every local official, state official, including us, we're operating with the best information we've been provided at the time. As I said earlier, the National Weather Service has done a heck of a job setting this up and letting people know that this is going to be torrential rainfall inland in an inland event. The problem with forecasting rainfall is it's one of the toughest things to do. You can say that it's going to rain over 5 days over a 30-county jurisdiction, but pinpointing exactly what watershed that rain is going to go into, it's dang near impossible to figure that out. And unfortunately, the city of Houston's huge. It's 2 to 3 million people. Pulling the trigger on that is an incredibly difficult situation. A lot of times, when you're facing a city like that in a rainfall event, you have to ask people to shelter in place because of the time frame that you're given. The time frame to evacuate the city of Houston could take days, literally days. So I believe that everybody's doing the best that they can right now with the information that they've been provided and have.
Quick follow-up. Do people need to get out? I mean, do people need to start thinking about getting out now? You're talking about another 15 to 20 inches of rain over the next 2 to 3 days.
People need to listen to the local officials right now in the Houston area, because I do not want to step on the governor. I do not want to step on local officials and confuse the message, because the most important thing during a disaster is a consistent message down to the public. So right now, we need them to listen to the local officials in each one of their jurisdictions.
Where in Texas are you? Is that a decision that needs to be reviewed after the fact, so we learn from this situation? The decision to have people stay in Houston.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is listen. After every disaster, we do what are called after-action reports. We have to go down and exhaustively get better after every disaster. It started, and we've been doing those solidly since Katrina. I mean, we want to get better, guys. We're in the business of saving lives and helping people. We don't want people to go through hardship and get killed during disasters. We always strive to get better with the resources that we have. So there will be extensive after-action reports done, not just by FEMA, but working in conjunction with, you know, our local governments, non-governmental organizations, to the state as well. So yes, we will strive to get better. But right now, guys, it's not a time to start pointing blame. Right now, what I need the media to do is organize the efforts, to help us organize citizen efforts, to ultimately help Texas. These people are in need.
Where in Texas are you going, sir?
I believe I'm going to Corpus Christi right off the bat, and then later San Antonio.
And then Senator Ted Cruz yesterday mentioned that one of the big requests he's passing along from local officials is for more high water rescue capabilities. What more could have been done in advance to have those in place, and where does that stand in terms of providing those capabilities?
So, when it comes to high water, you know, swift water rescue and search and rescue, each county, each state, and federal government all have a certain capacity, right? So what happens is that once again, when the locals, we pre-positioned a lot of search and rescue before the disaster declaration was ever approved by President Trump. We pre-positioned everything that we basically have down and in support of the state and local efforts. Now that those resources are there, we're basically at the direction of the governor to ultimately help the local governments. This is not just a federal government response. There's something called EMAC, the Emergency Management Assistance Compact. The state is also calling upon search and rescue, swift water rescue teams from all 50 states. There are teams coming in from all over the country, whether it's Chinook helicopters, swift water rescue, all of this is emergency management at work. It is, again, it's a partnership.
The National Flood Insurance
I just want to make one comment on the rescue too, and the comment I might want to add. I talked to Senator Cruz yesterday. One of the challenges with this storm is that it has to be safe for the rescue officials also. And so a lot of the rescue could not start till yesterday morning, just for the persons. And even now, air rescue is barely operationally safe. Comment on if you want to add anything.
Unlike Katrina, which had passed clear and we had VFR flight conditions, we're still operating in the midst of a tropical storm. So our flight crews, and we've got multiple flight crews, we have thrown every Coast Guard asset available at this response. But there are conditions where it's just not safe to fly. We've also brought in over 27 fast response teams to deal with this situation, but integrate that with the local responders, so this is a coordinated response as well. The good news is thousands of lives are being saved. And that is our objective right now, and we are not out of this by a long shot. So we're also postured to be able to sustain this level of effort as well.
Coming on, half of your helicopters operationally are there. Can you take more? Will you bring more? Are there more assets for Coast Guard to bring to bear in Texas?
Upon request, we will bring more in. We've also got great support by Customs and Border Protection. Air National Guard is bringing resources in. The other key part of this is safety of flight and just coordinating that airspace. The Air Maritime Operations Center, run by CBP, is providing that airspace deconfliction.
Do you want to talk about drones in the area where your crews might be operating?
So Department of Interior, they use drones in fire response technology, and so they're able to use this for damage assessment.
I was talking about individuals possibly flying while you're in flight operations?
Yeah, we are concerned about that. We have not encountered, but certainly we're flying at very low altitudes to effect rescues. We're monitoring every media source available. What's coming into the call centers, but even what's out of the Twitter feeds. We're looking at Google Maps to see where those Twitter feeds are coming from, if there's a concentration of calls, so we can be a little bit more even proactive to determine where we are. We've got 11 aircraft that are orbiting the area at the same time, looking for oil spills. We have not detected an oil spill yet, but we're actively monitoring that under ESF 10 on oil and hazardous response. But this is not the time to private citizens to monitor what is going on. This is a very congested airspace. We want to save lives. Thank you.
It's good to be here because I can report some good news, and the good news is that, and we talked about this yesterday, that the weather actually near the center of circulation was a whole lot better than the weather that pounded our area with the catastrophic rainfall. So it's not as heavy out there right now. It is windy because we're actually really close to the center of Tropical Storm Harvey, but the rain is moderate at this time here in the greater Houston area. Not necessarily going to stay that way, but that's the way it is now. So we have torrential rainfall that continues to hit north of us up there in East Texas. And eventually, by the way, that is going to put pressure on the Trinity River. Also, though, a significant risk for flooding across southwest Louisiana through the day today. Not quite as heavy for us, at least for the time being, with some dry air coming in from the south. The center of Harvey is actually spinning down there right around Bay City and near the coastline of Matagorda. And the big concern for later on today is going to be the likelihood that that center of circulation is going to drift back out over the Gulf of Mexico and potentially then hit us with some more rain. At this point, we're getting a nice break from the action for spring, the woodlands, for Brenham. We still do have some areas of some brief heavy rain across parts of Harris County, Brazoria County, and then especially Fort Bend County. The worst of the weather, the severe weather, and the greatest potential for new flooding is occurring over to our east, over to around Lake Charles. In fact, there's a tornado watch that's in effect for Beaumont, for Port Arthur, Lake Charles, and for much of southwestern Louisiana. We have a ton of flash flood warnings that are still in effect, but you know, this is going to be going on all day because we know from the last 2 days that the flooding across the city is still dramatic and it's going to take a long time to drain. So flash flood warning is in effect for Harris County. We had really heavy rain over the last 12 hours or so over here around Anahuac and Liberty. Liberty is really seeing some extremely serious flooding. I know we've been concentrating a lot on Houston, obviously, because it's such a big city, but a lot of areas outside of Houston, Liberty County has been hit really, really hard by this. Heading up here to the north, the Huntsville area and Walker County also has had some recent heavy rain, and so there's a flash flood warning there until 7:30 a.m. In fact, it's just about for the entire area. But check out this water vapor loop. So remember, the brownish areas are dry air, and where you see the bright blue, that's where it's very moist, and so that's where we're seeing the explosion of the storms off to our east over to the Lake Charles area. But as I've been waiting for now 2 or 3 days, finally that dry West Texas air is mixing into the storm. That is what's going to make for a pretty difficult forecast over the next couple of days, because for right now it has really slowed down the rate of rain, but still has not stopped the rain. And so it may be that we end up seeing a lot of this moisture that's back there by Austin and San Antonio wrap back across the area and bring us another shot of rain maybe by the afternoon or evening. So here's the latest forecast from the National Hurricane Center. Harvey is still classified as a tropical storm, believe it or not, 40-mile-per-hour winds. It is now moving, though, to the southeast at 3, and that means over the course of the next hour to 2 hours, the center technically is going to be back out over the coastal waters of the Gulf of Mexico, right off the coast of Matagorda and Brazoria County. From there, it is expected to move really slowly, just a slow motion movement here over the next 2 days. So because of that, we have to remain cautious, although I would think that given the present structure of the way the storm is set up, that still does mean really heavy rain for Louisiana and maybe East Texas. We still have to be mindful of the fact that it could potentially pull some more moisture in off the Gulf of Mexico tonight, maybe tomorrow, and give us another round of some really heavy rain, which obviously is the last thing we want to see. I mean, when you're this close to a tropical storm, you have to be prepared for anything. If it does drift a little bit farther off, let's say toward the east, more toward Lake Charles or Cameron Parish, Louisiana, well, that would help us out actually by reducing the chances for rain. Finally, the models are coming into agreement. You'll recall that over the last few days they were sort of just all over the place, but right now they're in pretty good agreement, and you'll see there that that matches up really well with the National Hurricane Center forecast. What about the short term? What's going to happen the rest of the day today? Well, here's the outlook from the Rapid Refresh model, which is our high resolution model. Instead of our other models, which go out, some of them go out 16 days, this one only goes out 18 hours. And so it gives us a really high res view and a very frequent view of what's happening here. And so what we're seeing in this outlook for the rest of the day today is just the catastrophic rain potentially moving over into East Texas, and around here maybe an additional 1, 2, or 3 inches of rain in many locations, which obviously we don't want to see any more rain at all. But at this point, if we see 2 or 3 inches of rain, it's actually not going to make the flooding that much worse than it already is compared to, let's say, if we were to get another 10-inch rainfall. That would just be, make it extra catastrophic. I don't even know what the next superlative is after that. So here's what we expect today. It's going to be windy coming up through the 7 and 8 o'clock hours. We'll have some wind gusts approaching tropical storm force in a couple spots with some moderate rain. It's just going to be dreary and kind of blowing rain all over the place. We'll have a chance for downpours as we head into the afternoon, depending on where the center of circulation ends up over the Gulf of Mexico. And of course, we'll be watching the path very closely as we head into this evening. Whether or not it drifts a little bit farther off toward the east or west might make a big difference in our rainfall forecast here over the next few days. So that's the latest look at the weather situation. I'm somewhat optimistic and hopeful that maybe the worst is over in terms of the rain, but we got to stay vigilant because if this thing decides to ramp back up and redevelop over the Gulf, well, it could be really bad news for us.
6:51 right now. Thank you, Mike. We have a couple of reporters who just can't make it in, and